Yo, what's going on, guys? It is time for another reaction video, and today I'll be reacting to iconic British foods you need to try before you die. So let's see what this is all about. Hopefully about to see some tasty stuff, because I think I'm going to go eat dinner right after I do this video. So let's see if it helps me to build up my appetite.
British food isn't exactly the first thing people go to when they think of world-class cuisine. But forget what you've heard about it. Truth is, the UK is home to some of the tastiest dishes around. These are iconic British foods you need to try before you die. You won't find many dishes simpler than bangers and mash. It consists of a few sausages, or one Cumberland sausage, served with a hefty dollop of mashed potatoes. More often than not, gravy will be involved.
That one looks good right there.
And that's pretty much it. Usually, of course, things turn out a little fancier than that. The sausages can be made from lamb or beef rather than the standard pork.
I'm glad I waited to ask, because I was just about to ask if there was pork. I can't say that I've ever had lamb sausage, so I'd be curious to know what that tastes like. And I've had beef franks, but I guess it's more of like a hot dog than a sausage. I don't know if I've had beef sausage before. I don't think I have.
The mash can be spruced up with cream or mustard, while a handful of extra side additions might be included too, depending entirely on the preference of the person making it. The first thing to know about the bacon sandwich is that British bacon isn't the same as American bacon. The British variant is leaner and meatier than the US version, since it comes from the loin of the pig rather than the belly. Some would even say the British stuff is tastier too.
Interesting. I love bacon, and there's so many different ways here to have bacon. Some people prefer it more like very, very cooked and super crunchy. Some of them like it, cooked but like flexible and more stringy, and some people like it kind of in between, where it's like a little bit of firmness to it, but it's not gonna like crack in half. You bite it, but this looks quite different, just as I mentioned, since it's coming from the loin instead of the belly. So I can't say I've ever tried bacon this way, and I don't know. I wonder if I can find it that way here in the US.
That's why in the UK, it seems far less crazy to stick a few rashers of bacon between two buttered slices of bread, slather it in ketchup or brown sauce, and just go to town on it. The bacon sandwich, or buddy as Northerners call it, is the ultimate quick fix breakfast. Some people like to spruce them up with fancy breads or fried eggs, but most of the time it's made with nothing more than bacon, bread, and sauce.
What I think makes a really good bacon sandwich is smoky bacon. I love that smokiness, and I like it quite crispy.
I think in the US it's more common to have the bacon along with something like eggs, or I'm allergic to eggs, so a lot of times I substitute like hash browns. And you could do bacon solo, but it's just not as common. Maybe sausage solo, but not bacon.
And that's just the way it should be. The full English is probably the most well-known breakfast in the UK. Although people make slight alterations to the dish based on their own preferences, a proper full English should include at least some combination of sausage, bacon, eggs, tomatoes, mushrooms, toast, baked beans, and black pudding.
Not sure that I've ever seen beans for breakfast either. Everything else looked pretty standard, but I've never had beans for breakfast. Nothing wrong with it. It's just not common here.
Other regions in the UK have their own variations too. In Scotland, for example, a full breakfast might include haggis or oatcakes, while in Wales you might find it includes cockles or laver bread. Although most British hotels and B&Bs will offer a full English breakfast,
I don't know what haggis is. If somebody wants to explain that one to me in the comments, unless they end up telling me in the video, but right now I don't know what that is.
best ones tend to be served in grubby little greasy spoons and should cost no more than a $5. Don't bother trying anything too fancy with this one. You'll only be disappointed. One of the many pies and pastries to be found in British cuisine, beef Wellington, is made up of filet steak coated with pâté and duxelles, which is a kind of mix of mushrooms, onions, and herbs. This steak is then wrapped in ham and baked in a pastry. Many recipes use pâté de foie gras, but this particular ingredient tends to be a little controversial, to say the least.
I only know about this dish from years ago when Hell's Kitchen first started airing in the US, and that's probably, man, Hard to believe. That show's probably been well over 10 years now. I never really knew what a beef Wellington was prior to that. But even still, I've never tried it. I've never tasted it, never eaten it anywhere before.
This is another one of those delectably hearty dishes that you'll most often find served in pubs up and down the UK, though it's not too hard to make at home. If nothing else, it's a great use of any leftovers from a Sunday roast. One of Britain's more notorious foods, black pudding, is a kind of blood sausage made from pork blood, fat, and cereal, which is then spiced with mint, thyme, and pennyroyal.
I don't want to make assumptions, but just based on what they said it's made with, I'm not too sure that I would like this one. But it's hard to know without tasting these things. I don't know where to find this type of cuisine here locally. If there happens to be anybody here in the U.S., and more specifically in Houston or Texas, that's watching this and knows where I could perhaps find some of these dishes, let me know in the comments, because I want to try to start trying some of these foods. Especially, my grandmother's from England. She's from Corby, England, and she didn't make a lot of this stuff, or really any of this stuff. So I never really got to learn much about the food through her. So maybe I can do that now.
Taste-wise, imagine eating a particularly bready kind of sausage, and you're probably halfway there. Although it's a regional specialty in the West Midlands and northwest of England, black pudding is a staple part of the full English, so you can expect to find it on breakfast tables around the country. It'd be very easy to give the chip buddy a bad rap, but that wouldn't be very fair, because this is by far one of the best comfort foods Britain has to offer. The idea is simple. You heap a load of thick-cut chips, French fries for Americans, onto a slice of buttered bread, throw a little sauce on if you like, stick another slice of bread on top, and then you're good to go.
I don't think I would ever just take some French fries and put them between two slices of bread. I just eat them just as they are, or chips, as y'all call them. Not unless I was like doing it like I was mentioning a moment ago, where it's gonna have like bacon and sausage and be like layered, but just simply fried potatoes between bread. I don't think I would eat it that way. I'm not opposed to trying that, but I just wouldn't probably eat it that way for any reason.
Most often found in the north of England, the chip buddy is a mainstay food of the British working class. Depending on where you are in the country and on what kind of bread you're using, you might hear it referred to as a chip sandwich, chip roll, chip bap, chip cob, chip sarnie, or something else entirely. Doesn't matter what it's called though, it still tastes great. At first glance, chicken tikka masala may seem like an Indian dish, but it's believed by many to have been created by South Asian immigrants in the United Kingdom, with one account placing its origins in Glasgow. This is disputed, however, and others claim it is simply a modification of an existing Indian recipe.
That looks super, super tasty.
Either way, chicken tikka masala is one of the country's most iconic and best-loved dishes. It consists of small pieces of chicken that have been marinated in spices and yogurt before being oven roasted and stirred into a tomato-based curry sauce. It's usually served with rice and naan, and is served in pretty much every single one of the UK's many, many, many Indian restaurants and takeaways.
I never would have guessed yogurt would have been in that. I mean, I guess it makes sense for the thickening of it, but it's just not something I would have guessed would have been in there. Interesting.
Also known as shepherd's pie, cottage pie basically consists of ground meat, such as beef or lamb, cooked in an onion gravy, topped with mashed potatoes, and baked in an oven. Often, it includes other ingredients such as peas or carrots, and if it doesn't, then you'll more than likely find them served on the side.
That's another one I've heard of but never tried either.
British people will remember cottage pie as a staple school dinner, and you can also find it on the menu in most pubs. But anyone will tell you that the best cottage pie is always homemade. Named for the ultra-posh and highly controversial school from which it originated, Eton Mess is a traditional dessert made up of strawberries, meringue, and whipped cream. Some recipes include other fruits such as raspberries and blackberries, but as long as you've got something fruity to play off against that cream and the crumbly meringue, you'll be just fine.
That one seems pretty common, and I do think my grandmother used to make something sort of similar to this. It just wasn't prepared exactly that. Like the presentation wasn't the same. It was just more of like a in one big dish, and then you kind of would serve it out of that dish onto your plate or your bowl or whatever.
This one is best enjoyed at the height of summer. Fish and chips is one of the world's most famous British dishes, and for good reason too. It's basically fish fried in batter served up with the thickly cut chips, usually doused in salt and vinegar, with a little ketchup or some mushy peas on the side. The fish itself is most often cod or haddock, but other kinds are occasionally used.
Never been a fan of peas. I don't care how you make them, I just don't like them. And typically I don't really usually eat much of any seafood. But one thing that I do occasionally have is if it's fried fish, I'll have it. I don't love it. It just depends on how well it's cooked and how good the quality of the fish is. If it's nice and flaky and tasty, then I'll do it. But if it tastes anything fishy whatsoever, I just don't like the fishy taste of anything when it's seafood. So yeah, if I ever make it out to UK, I would definitely try this.
Although you'll find fish and chips pretty much everywhere in the UK, proper seaside chippies almost always do it best. The fish is always freshly caught, the chips will be made just right, and the setting is invariably just right for the occasion. Put short, this is the ultimate British culinary experience. Game pies are traditional English pastries that are best known for having become really quite over the top during the Victorian era. Although recipes for game pies have changed over the years, modern variations tend to contain meats such as venison, rabbit, pheasant, pigeon, or boar, and are mixed in with garlic, shallots or onions, bacon, pork, as well as a range of different herbs and spices. Unlike the Victorians, you needn't worry about birds stuffed within birds or crazy fancy pastry patterns. Simplicity is key here. Simplicity and a good ale, that is. The jam roly-poly is pretty much just a Swiss roll with a better name. It's a pudding made from suet dough, which is spread with jam and rolled up before baking. You'll sometimes find it dusted with sugar or served with cream, custard, or ice cream, but it's a nice enough treat no matter how you have it.
Never had anything like that either.
Modern versions often use sponge cake like a Swiss roll rather than suet, partly because it's easier to get hold of, and partly because it's a little more palatable. Either way, it doesn't matter, just so long as it's bursting with fruit jam. Okay, yes, jellied eels might seem like something they'd serve you in hell, and well, yeah, they're really not that great. This dish is prepared by chopping up eels, boiling them in stock, then allowing it to cool and set into a jelly. Just to make things even better, they are also eaten cold.
I definitely, unless I was starving, would not try that whatsoever. It just doesn't sound appealing, the look of it. Yeah, just wouldn't do that without a good reason.
Jellied eels are slimy, salty, and totally gross too, but they have a genuinely fascinating past, and trying a bowl of them in a proper East End establishment really does feel like you're tasting history. A kipper is basically a split herring that has been pickled and smoked, and although they're eaten all over Europe, they're particularly popular in Britain. Nowadays, they're eaten as a breakfast food, although they're not quite as popular as they once were. So don't take them for granted if you do get hold of some. You might just be surprised how tasty they can be. It might be a shock to discover that the Knickerbocker glory comes from the same country as jellied eels and black pudding, but it's true. Once sold almost exclusively out of the country's many ice cream vans.
That's a fancy ice cream truck they just had. I don't want to roll it back, but that was the fanciest ice cream truck I've ever seen.
Knickerbocker glories are basically elaborate ice cream sundaes, made up of vanilla ice cream, strawberries, whipped cream, syrup, sprinkles, and a wafer, all served in a tall glass. Sometimes they might include chopped nuts, more syrups, chocolate, or anything else any kid could ever want. And yes, they really do taste as good as they look. The Battenberg is easily one of Britain's most visually striking desserts, but it's definitely something of an acquired taste. The inner section is nice enough, being made up of a light sponge held together with jam. The outer layer, however, is made from marzipan, a thick fondant-like confection made up of sugar, honey, and almonds. Marzipan has got a genuinely unique flavor to it, but it's not for everyone. In fact, a 2019 survey found that it was one of the UK's most hated foods. Still, no one would blame you if you swapped it out for a little fondant instead.
Visually, it looks tasty, but I've never tried the exterior part that she was describing. But everything that was in it seems like it would be all right. But I guess you don't know until you try it. So I guess it's gonna be another one I have to see if I can find it somewhere here in the States.
Funnily enough, mince pies really aren't what they sound like. Although they did indeed contain minced meat once upon a time, today they're a sweeter treat served exclusively at Christmas. The modern mince pie is a sweet pastry dusted with sugar, filled with a concoction of dried fruits and spices. They're pretty much bite-sized and are served in their millions every year. For many Brits, these things literally taste like Christmas.
I'm sure those are good, and this statement will kind of go across the board for anything that they show with all the fruity stuff in it. Some of the ones that I already showed. I'm just not real big on fruits and desserts. I'll eat fruit, but I just don't care for it mixed in as desserts. So like that's probably one I would pass. I don't like fruits in pies. I don't like fruits in ice creams. It's just not my thing. Nothing wrong with it. Just not for me. So I probably would not try that one.
Thanks in part to the stratospheric rise of the fast food bakery chain Greggs, the humble pasty has become one of the UK's favorite lunch snacks. Originating in Cornwall, pasties are usually made by wrapping a filling in a pie-like pastry and then baking them. Cornish pasties always contain beef, potato, swede, and onion, but countless different variations exist, including chicken, pork, turkey, cheese, vegetables, and more.
Now those look tasty. That's something I would definitely try. It looks very, like, I'm trying to think. People don't get mad at me if I get this wrong, but it reminds me somewhat of like a larger scale empanada, which is something that's more like South American, Argentinian. But like this looks like a big version of something like that. It's kind of like a flaky bready on the outside, and then usually got some sort of potatoes and meat and maybe a few other things on the inside. That looks good. I would try it.
As with anything, for the best pasties, you'll need to go straight to the source, Cornwall. They don't get much better than that. Think of the Ploughmans as kind of like the British version of the charcuterie board. It's a spread of various foodstuffs, and different places will offer different variations. But the key ingredients are bread, cheese, and onions. You might also find salad, ham, hard-boiled eggs, apple, chutney, pickled eggs or onions, or any other similar cold ingredients. Ploughman's lunches are rather famous for being sold in pubs, having once been pretty much the only type of food they would agree to serve. As such, a proper Ploughman's is invariably served with a pint of beer. Another cold British classic is the pork pie, a small snack with a long-reaching history. The earliest mentions of something resembling the pork pie appear as far back as the 14th century, and the use of gelatin to preserve the meat inside was a staple method of medieval cooking. Nowadays, pork pies are often included as part of a Ploughman's, or eaten with a salad on the side. Arguably the best around is the Melton Mowbray pork pie, which is always hand-molded, made with uncured meat, and unlike other versions, uses pork that has been chopped rather than minced. They may not look like much, but they're one of Britain's most beloved snack foods. Scones, or as some denizens of the UK say it, scones, are a type of sweet or sometimes savory baked food made from wheat or oatmeal. Although they come in many varieties, the most famous use of scones.
Scone reminds me a little bit more of like a biscuit here in the U.S. And as I'm saying that, I'm I love that she's got like the what is that, like a little knitted thing around the teapot. I've never in my life seen that little warmer thing around a teapot. If my grandmother was still alive, I could definitely see her having something like that. But I don't recall that she ever actually did. But yeah, that's kind of funny. But I never, but these definitely resemble what we would call a biscuit here. And I know biscuits there are cookies. Biscuits here are more savory, bready, flaky like this.
Or oatmeal. Although they come in many varieties, the most famous use of scones in England is as part of cream tea, a traditional type of afternoon tea that has them served with clotted cream and jam. The pronunciation of the word is also amazing.
That straight up looks like a Grand's biscuit here, like identical to a Grand's biscuit, which I love Grand's biscuits.
Major point of contention amongst British people. A 2016 survey found that 51% of Britons pronounce it to rhyme with gone, whereas 42% pronounce it to rhyme with bone. The former is a Northern and Scottish thing, whereas the latter is a Southern thing. For some reason, Brits take this debate very, very seriously indeed.
So, first question, scone.
Scone. If you're from Northern, it's scone, isn't
Scone.
Scone it is.
It is scone.
Because once it's scone, it's scone.
The range in quality between good Scotch eggs and bad Scotch eggs is very wide indeed. That is to say that bad Scotch eggs are very bad indeed, and good Scotch eggs are nothing less than pure bliss. Scotch eggs are boiled eggs wrapped in sausage meat, coated in breadcrumbs and deep fried or baked. They're a favorite bar snack up and down the UK, but you'll also find lesser versions in British supermarkets.
That one looks interesting, but I cannot try it because I am allergic to eggs, and I would be sick as a dog if I ate that.
A good Scotch egg should have a thick lining of high-quality pork sausage meat, preferably well-flavored with herbs such as parsley and chives. The egg should be soft-boiled rather than hard-boiled, and when you cut or bite into it, the yolk should basically explode. This is one dish that's worth the extra effort. To most British people, the term scouse will conjure images of Liverpool, where the inhabitants are colloquially known as scousers. But they're called this for a reason. Scouse was originally a stew concocted by sailors, which first originated in Norway and spread to Liverpool, once Britain's foremost port. Although the city has changed a lot since its imperial heyday, the dish has remained, and is still served at cafes and restaurants across the city. This stew is usually lamb or beef based, and also contains onions, carrot, potatoes, cabbage, and pretty much any other leftover vegetable you have.
That one looks tasty too. I would eat that. As I'm watching this, I'm sitting here going over food options for when I'm done with this video. I'm like, where can I go walk to that might have some of these dishes? I live in downtown Houston, and so I'm like right in the heart of downtown, and so there's so many restaurants and things that I can literally walk to, but I'm just trying to think in my head if there's anything like this or any of these plates I've been seeing so far that I might potentially be able to find somewhere around here.
Although beetroot tends to be a particularly popular ingredient. Served up with some nice crusty bread, scouse comes out on top as the best winter stew out there, and one of the UK's tastiest regional dishes, full stop. Stargazy pie is a truly peculiar dish.
That looks like a zombie dish. Like the fish were still alive and they were trying to jump out and they got, they died in the midst of trying to climb out. I apologize. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but that's probably one of the strangest looking dishes I've ever seen. Maybe it is way tastier and more interesting, but this initial impression of it is unique to say the least.
Both in name and appearance. The term stargazy refers to the fact that the fish in the pie, usually pilchards or sardines, are facing outwards, with their heads sticking up through the crust. Aside from the fish, stargazy pie can contain any number of different ingredients, including hard-boiled eggs, bacon, onion, mustard, herbs, wine, and more. And although it looks downright weird, it actually tastes pretty great. It's a rich, salty, and extremely filling dish that acts as an entire meal in one. The roast dinner is probably the ultimate British dish, typically eaten on a Sunday, and nowadays very popular in pubs. The typical roast is centered around one particular kind of roast meat. This can be anything from beef to pork to lamb to chicken, although game birds are occasionally.
Get roasted chicken pretty much anywhere and everywhere around the U.S. Most restaurants, if it's a sit-down restaurant and it's got a versatile menu, pretty much get roasted chicken just about anywhere. Now, whether or not it's going to be on the bone or if it's going to be a full chicken like this is to be said. A lot of times it might just be chicken breast or a half cut chicken. Just depends on where you're eating. But it's not uncommon though to be going through a grocery store and for them to have a like a heated upright like shelf with freshly roasted chickens under there that you can just pick up a chicken and buy it to take home for dinner. And they're usually only like, I don't know, inflation right now is changing the prices on everything, but I would say $5 to $8, maybe $10. I don't know that they're quite $10, but I really don't know though, just because of inflation right now. But they used to be a little bit on the lower end. So yeah, you could pick up a chicken and it looks very similar to this one.
Occasionally used too. Accompanying the meat, you'll find any combination of roast potatoes, gravy, broccoli, green beans, cabbage, parsnips, swede, carrots, peas, and cauliflower cheese. Each different type of meat comes with its own additions too. Roast beef, for example, is served with Yorkshire pudding, mustard, or horseradish. Pork tends to come with applesauce, crackling, and stuffing. Lamb almost always sits alongside mint sauce, and chicken is accompanied by stuffing or cranberry sauce. Arguably, the best roast dinner experience involves a pub, friends or family, and a lot of beer and wine. But nothing beats a homemade Sunday roast either, and the scope for customization is practically unlimited.
Every one of those plates looked amazing. Like I would probably try every one of those.
Toad in the hole is a little less gross than it sounds, mostly because it doesn't involve any actual toads.
Okay.
Instead, the toads are sausages, while the hole refers to a single giant Yorkshire pudding, usually served with gravy and vegetables. This dish is a kind of middle ground between the roast.
So I have a question. When they're saying pudding, here when I think of pudding, and I think this is probably the same for most Americans, pudding for us is like a dessert, and it's usually like sweet, and it's vanilla or chocolate or banana, some sort of like a dessert food. So what does, like something like this, what would that flavor of pudding be? What would that taste like? And maybe I'm wondering if the term pudding is even the same here as it is there. For us, pudding is not Jello, which is the clear, wobbly stuff. It's like more of a creamy, thicker consistency. And it would, like I said, be vanilla, chocolate type flavors. So I don't know. So that makes me wonder, what would that taste like? But like, what would that pudding taste like with sausage?
Roast dinner and bangers and mash. Unfortunately, toad in the hole is far harder to find than either of those dishes, but it's more than worth a go if you can.
I know I keep pausing it a lot and I apologize, but there's so many different dishes that they're covering on here. If there is a certain like cookbook, maybe for instance, that I should check out, if there's anything like that on Amazon, that would be cool. Maybe I can attempt to try to make some of these meals myself. Because this toad in the hole actually looks like it could be an interesting dish, and looks like it would probably be fairly easy to make. I don't know, it could be completely wrong, but yeah, if y'all have suggestions for like some cookbooks, let me know.
Especially if you love a good Yorkshire pudding. As you may have learned on a certain 90s sitcom, trifle is an English dessert made up of sponge fingers, fruit, jelly, custard, whipped cream, and decidedly not beef sautéed with.
Now, this is one I definitely know of from my grandmother. My grandmother, for family get-togethers and events, she would always bring the trifle. That was her thing. She would make the trifle. It was very common for us to have that as a dessert, or even just as a side with your meal. But to me, it's more of like a dessert. But yeah, she used to make that all the time.
Peas and onions. A good trifle feels like heaven in a bowl. A great trifle, which contains the traditional alcoholic element, such as port, sherry, or Madeira wine, is one of the best desserts out there, full stop. Every layer works together in perfect harmony, making for both a visual and literal feast for the senses. There's ample opportunity for experimentation here too, as pretty much anything that's sweet is bound to prove most welcome in whatever recipe you decide to use. Referred to on the Great British Bake Off as the nation's favorite cake, Victoria sponge cake is kind of like a sweet, sugary sandwich. in which a filling of jam and cream sits between 2 thick layers of light frosted sponge. It's not a hugely common menu item in British restaurants or pubs, but the Victoria sponge cake is a favorite for home bakers, and almost every Brit has turned their hand to it at least once before. Luckily, it's a cinch to make, and more than worth the effort, too. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more mashed videos about your favorite foods are coming soon.
That all looked amazing for the most part. There were a handful of them that I wouldn't really probably taste, didn't really care for. The video for the full link for this video will be in my description below, so go check out Mashed since I am borrowing their content to be able to create this content for my channel. And if you have suggestions of other videos, I'm trying to do a whole series on Britain, England, London, UK, South Wales, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, pretty much all of those territories. So if you have suggestions on some of those, please share them in the comments below. I apologize. It is Friday. I am hungry, and it's been a long work day, and I'm doing this after work, and I'm just not thinking on my toes like I usually do. But yeah, I'm looking for suggestions of other videos. That's the short version. So comment below with links to other YouTube videos that you think I should react to that have anything and everything to do with your culture there, whether it's food, music, stereotypes, military, geography, pretty much anything and everything there is to know about England. So yeah, if you're new here and you like this content, want to see more of it, make sure to subscribe, click that bell so you'll get notified every time I upload a new video. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It does help the algorithm, and it helps me to get in front of more potential viewers so that I can keep growing my audience. I'm really trying to grow my audience and reach more people. So with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Later.